Grip it and rip it, pal.
Are we good? Welcome back to Recovery APN. My name is Dan, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andy.
Hey, pal. How are you?
Doing well, man. Good day today, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we got a pretty unique episode that I'm very excited about. My co-host, Andy, will be sharing his experience in his recovery.
Yeah. So again, on this podcast, I'll be the only person that did not go through APN. But I thought it was super important to kind of tell everybody my story, right? You know, the thing about an addict or an alcoholic or even somebody that suffered from mental health is we are uniquely useful, right? Because we've been down the road. You know, we've been in those.
Uniquely useful, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it.
What's going on?
Yeah. It was good. I was cracking a joke.
Well, it wasn't a good one. It wasn't a uniquely useful joke. We need a grown-up over here sometimes.
Keith to the rescue.
Absolutely. So anyway, I just thought it was important for me to, get authentic with everybody and, talk about my mental health struggles at times and then my path to recovery. So, I'm excited to kind of get into it with you today and let everybody know, my path, what took me from a, central North Jersey guy and what took me to South Florida and now out in Colorado. And it's been definitely an interesting path. It wasn't one that I drew up, but it's the path that I'm on and it's been awesome. So,
yeah. So it's interesting, right? And I think I'm eager to listen to it and hear from you and learn from you, right? Obviously I'm not the smartest person in the room. So like I'm a listener here.
Yeah.
But I also think it kind of doesn't really matter that you didn't go to APN, right? I think everyone at the lodge, right, whether they be current clients or alumni, they're still experiencing the same thing.
Sure.
Right. And I guess what I wanted before we kind of get into your story, right, and kind of what brought you here today, is I'm kind of curious about like, what are you excited about as a host?
Yeah.
And also as a guest for this podcast?
Well, it's kind of like the same answer, right? The fact that we get to work with our alumni and to see the, people recreate their lives and all of a sudden have purpose and hope. And that was something that I've lived, you know what I mean? I was living in my car in Newark, New Jersey in 2014 in January in the cold, contemplating suicide, and that's not my life now. My life is full with purpose, and I've seen it in my personal life, in my recovery, but I get to see it at work too, right? I get to see it with the people I work with every day. I get to see the fruits of the labor, right? People come to APN, people go to rehab, and they work their butt off. And they get results, and their families all of a sudden trust them again. And they're a husband's back in the big bed, right? And hey, he's done well, and hey, you know what I mean? Like kids earn their parents' trust back, and not kids, but right, young adults and
kids or grown-ups, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But just like you see people recover, and it's not recovering. Hey, I'm always recovering from this thing, right? If you do the work, you just like hey, if LeBron James breaks his leg, he recovered from that broken leg. Doesn't mean he can't break his leg again,
right.
But he doesn't go around thinking, oh my God, my leg, I broke it once. We get, from addiction and mental health, we recover from this thing. We have a life that is free and it is fun and it is purposeful, and I'm excited that I get to work with our alumni because I can see it and hear it from people and help people get to that point. And I'm excited to talk, my story about it.
Yeah. And what I'm excited about too, is that typically when it's someone in your position, right? When you open up and talk about your experiences, the people that you're communicating to, so in this case, the alumni or current clients, I feel like they're going to be even more comfortable in working with you.
Sure.
Because you're talking to them, you're communicating as someone, as an employee, as APN, but not necessarily a peer. And I think by you doing this brings you to that peer level. Absolutely.
And I think it's important because I'm not a therapist, right? That I have life experience, right? So I don't tell people, hey, do X, Y, or Z. I say, hey, this is what I did in X, Y, and Z situation, right? Going on a first date, going on a job interview, going back to your parents' house to make an amends, hey, going on a flight across the country and a golf tournament, and I always drank or whatever. Like I have that experience. So I say, hey, when I was in that experience, this is what I did well, but more importantly, this is what I didn't do well, and this is how I learned so I don't do the same mistake again. So that I didn't mean to bring it up twice, but it makes us Alcoholics Anonymous uniquely useful in these situations.
No, and I love the examples that you use, right? They sound so basic, right? But when you think about it, right, like people like talk about going on first dates, right? You're so accustomed to dating, right? Having a drink at the table.
Let's before we wait for the
let's go have a drink at the bar,
absolutely,
right? Or like not even like your first date, right? Instead of going to a dinner, right? You're like, hey, let's grab drinks,
yep,
right? And so it's like to talk to someone that experience, and it's not that bad, right? Not everyone is as addictive as we are,
sure,
right? And I think the second one was a huge thing for me. Flying, right? Like when I was flying, I always needed a medicate.
Xanax and some weed. Let's make it happen.
And like now it's like, oh, I could like watch a movie and like remember the movie.
Take a nap.
I could take a nap sober. Like what?
I could just sit here and watch people. It's crazy. It's like somebody at like when I was 9 years old put the thought in my head that I need to be happy and comfortable 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year. And if not, I need to fix it. And whatever coping mechanisms I came up with, gambling, gentlemen's clubs, drugs and alcohol, whatever coping mechanism it was, I did it because I had to be happy.
Right.
I had to be happy.
Or things that you thought would make you happy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
It's fleeting.
It's like the artificial happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah. So like, again, why we're here, right? Like I'm interested, like obviously like compared to other episodes, right? We're talking about what brought our guest or our alumni to APN. But I guess, let's talk a little bit about like what your upbringing was
sure.
like and like
sure.
what like, your addiction was like prior to you getting clean or prior to you going to treatment.
Absolutely. Say. So again, but I was also somebody lucky where, working in this field and now living in recovery, I hear a lot of people go to treatment and detox many times. I was somebody, and God willing, one and done. I went to one detox, I went to one treatment center, and I quote unquote got it. It's been.
You have a big brain, so it works.
I did a big brain. Yeah, it's my brother's son. He loves saying that, big brain. 1050 on the SAT, pal. Yeah, you know what I mean. I went to school to be a phys ed teacher, right? So. Anyway.
What is it quote? Like they say, if you can't teach, like teach gym.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Khaki shorts and a hoodie to work every day. Do we want to walk the track or play volleyball? Did you change? Those were the questions that
Make sure you put deodorant on after gym class.
But listen, we're not even at that part of the story. Like I wanted to be high school Harry. I wanted to be a head high school football coach. Like when you talk about what your dream was, I wanted to be a head high school football coach.
Like
that was
from
my
what
dream.
age?
Like 13.
Okay.
Like I loved it. Like I played sports my whole life. I grew up in North Jersey. My parents were from Brooklyn, New York and Yonkers, New York, and they grew up poor and they worked their butts off and gave me and my brother a great life. Mm-hmm. Middle of the road. We never wanted or everything we needed we had, right? And we were in sports, the whole Italian thing. Family's the most important thing. Like my father's a great man. He showed me what principles, and this is how to be a good father. This is how to be a good friend. This is how to be a good husband. I seen it. My parents are married 45 years.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. Shout out, Mom, Pat and Mike, killing it, right?
Congrats.
And but so he was this example, right? And listen, my mom, my brother, my dad, no addiction, no mental health stuff. Maybe a little Al-Anon, they could, like a little therapy, right? But for the most part, they're living, they're killing it, right?
When you were young, right? You talk about like how grateful you were, and right,
sure.
and what the value that they provided to you, and like how great the family was. Did you realize that at a young age, or did you look past it and take it for granted?
Both. I knew that, again, we had the big family and the pasta on Sundays, and there was some pride in being a North Jersey Italian. And listen, later on, that my addiction, that gave me some BS with like this whole, like, hey, I like to gamble on sports with a bookie, and I'm a paisan, all bullshit, right? Like Tony Soprano, like those are sociopaths, and they're fictional characters.
Bada bing.
Yeah, like all that crap, right? But as a 20-year-old kid that's insecure, and he doesn't know he's insecure, he's gonna flex because hey, I'm Sopranos are on Sunday night, and like, hey, I know where Bada Bing is. That's Satin Dolls on Route 17. Like, let's go. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
And it just helped me feel a part of. Just like drugs and alcohol did. I needed to be accepted by whatever the cool or whatever the acceptable people were. Mm-hmm. Which, again, I'm fast forwarding in my story. But back to, again, older brother, I was the younger. We still joke today, as the younger brother in an Italian family, I was the prince. As a heroin addict, I'm still the favorite child, and my brother never had like white picket fence, a family and a job, and I'm still the favorite, so I grew up as the baby, right? And entitled, right? And that entitlement definitely was big throughout my life. But anyway, big into sports, football, basketball, and baseball, and small school, I graduated with 110 kids in my class. And I went and I played Division III football. But again, it was more of, I didn't want to disappoint people because I was a good athlete. And I was like, oh, let me play. Let's just do, this is just the next thing I'm supposed to do. Cause I want to be perfect. Everybody expects me to go play. I was the quarterback and all the bullshit that comes with it. And
let me ask you a question on that. So when you say like people expected that from you, was that imaginary?
Yeah. Fancied completely.
Like
in
no
my
one,
mind.
like your parent, like no one outside of your brain were saying like, you have to play in college. You have to do this. If you don't, like, you're letting us down.
Just me. And again, that's that insecurity.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fear's driving, and I'm sitting shotgun saying, hey, where are we going today? And fear's like, hey, pal, relax. I'll let you know where we're going later. All right, I'm just along for the ride.
Right.
And so I go to this school, Montclair State, and I play ball there. And again, that's when the heavier drugs and the more just, I wouldn't say destructive, but just the behavior changed to more doing things that I wouldn't have done, crossing lines that I would have never crossed. Cocaine and lifting and being the tough guys and all the BS that comes with, hey, I'm a football player. Like, it's all, it's all crap.
I'm the quarterback.
Yeah, but
I get all the girls.
The ego in it just drove me. And listen, in high school, I was good. And in college, all of a sudden I went from being good to not, hey, your first year in college, you're on the bottom of the, so now I need to earn respect and I need to be liked. So I'll do that. I'll snort that. I'll smoke that. I'll drink that, just to be a part of the crew, right? And
that started freshman year
in college.
And let me ask you a question. So, like, in college, in high school, you were obviously probably the best player in your team, or one of the.
Well, yep.
And going to now you're in college, right? Now you're trying to work your way up. Did you notice, like, from a performance standpoint, that you're not getting better because of the drugs?
No.
Or did it affect you?
No, it didn't. It wasn't at that level yet, right? It was smoking a lot of weed, and it was drinking Thursday night and Saturday night, because it progressed.
Got it, okay.
So I was still, I still had, because in high school I didn't go to. I wanted to be the perfect kid. I wanted to be a good athlete. Hey, the mama's boy and all the stuff, right? So I didn't really go too crazy in high school. So it progressed through college. By the end of college, it was, again, it was more, but I still got through college. I still played 5 years. I got redshirted a year, tore a hamstring, but still played, right? But me and Dan were actually talking about this earlier, is the identity that came with that, right? Being the good sports kid in elementary school, and then in high school, and then playing in college. And then I got asked, my last year playing football, I got asked to start coaching high school basketball. I was 22 years old, and I was good at it. So I went and I started doing that, and then I started coaching baseball that summer, and then the following fall I started coaching football. So I went from playing all these sports, now I'm coaching them.
So you graduated in like a June, let's say, and then like
it took me an extra.
Well, whatever it is, right? The month if it's
my last football game was early November 2005. I was coaching basketball in 2 weeks, high school basketball in 2 weeks.
And how did you get that job?
Some guy I knew that was my JV basketball coach.
So you had a reputation.
Yeah,
people liked
small
you.
town,
people trusted you.
Absolutely, and I used that later on. I went, the same school I worked at was the same school I went to, and my one of my football coaches became the principal. And I used to walk into his office and put my feet up, and he was my quarterback coach, and I had a better relationship with him than all these other teachers. And I'm late doing drugs, they're like, how is this loser sitting in the principal's office?
And that's why I kind of wanted to ask you, because I know a little bit about your story, but I wanted to share with the listeners, right? At 22, this is unheard of, right? To get offered a coaching job with kids that are 13, 14, 15 years old, right? 16, 18 years old, right? Yeah. I forgot, I was thinking about elementary school.
Yeah.
But, and then give them in your hands, right? And you are fresh out of college.
Fresh.
Right? I'm thinking back to if I was fresh out of college, what? So it's interesting, and I know part of your story, I'm excited for you to share it, but it's interesting that this guy trusted you, right? With these 18-year-olds,
multiple people,
and you're coming fresh out of college, and this guy trusted you, right? So it's that's mind blowing to me, not because of who you are, but someone would give that responsibility to someone so young.
So I still listen. I had the house of cards and the facade that I was this good, and I was, it got dark for me. I got sober at the age of 30. And my life got dark between 26 and 30, 27, where I wasn't killing. If I look at my behaviors, I wasn't living a healthy, fulfilled life. But on the outside, I kept it together where I was respectable. I wasn't doing drugs in the morning or during the day. I showed up when I was supposed to.
Right.
I had passion about it. I was good at it. it just progressed, right? And I think, and you know, it progressed as like my friends that I grew up with became serious in life and like started getting married and having, you know, like, you know, kids and a family. And I just started hanging out with the younger kids and like smoking weed and doing drugs. And like, I went down and everybody else went up. And I don't know why that happened. Yeah, it's just the insecurities at everything. Like, I didn't think I was good enough at stuff, right? Even though, and again, like, it's so weird, right? And the week I got sober, the actor died. What was his name? Philip Seymour Hoffman. And I always remember when he died, it was because I got sober in February of 2014. And I remember people in my first AA meetings, I didn't know anything about AA, and they're like, see, it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much success you have. Right. If you suffer from this, it's going to kick your ass if you're not treating it. And I'll never forget that. And that's something that, like, because I was on the road to being the head high school football coach, and I had a good job, everything I always wanted. And I was still, you know, acting out in every way.
Yeah, I mean, like,
falling short of what you're supposed to do in life.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, in our brains, right, and how we go about justifying our actions. Like, and I could relate to that, where I would go to work and do well, and then like think I deserve to do the drugs, right?
Sure.
And it's like, you showed up for school, you took on responsibility of making sure these guys or girls were at practice, right? Yeah. Games, this, that, the other, right? No one got hurt or whatever, right? Yeah. Whatever the goals were on the team. And you go home, right? And it's like, look at what I did. I deserve these drugs. I deserve to get high.
Sure.
Right? When a normal person was like, okay, great. Like, that's just what I'm supposed to do.
You're supposed to do a job. Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's not rewarding to like do what you're supposed to get paid for.
Sure. You know, and again, it went into the thing with my parents. Like, hey, I'm the favorite and the good and hey, all the principal and the superintendent and the athletic director, all these other coaches. Hey, Andy, you're doing a great job. Like, I was like falsely empowered always.
Interesting.
And that it inflated the ego and inflated the entitlement, where I could, hey, I don't need to. Hey, school starts at 8. I don't need 8:10. I could be there at 8:15.
Right,
you know, like,
yeah.
and like it was just whatever. One thing led to another, but it didn't. I didn't live by principles. I wasn't a good man. You know what I mean? I was dishonest. I was a jerk as a teacher. Right? Like I played favorites.
Were you like a dick to your students?
No, I was nice to the kids I coached, and I wasn't nice to anybody else. I was just a bad person. I wasn't a good person.
So remind me of the sports you coach again.
Football, basketball, and baseball.
So, like, if I was like your quarterback, you were nice to me.
You could have done anything you wanted.
But if I was like played soccer, you're like, go fuck yourself.
Yes and no. If you gave me any kind of like, I was a jerk, you know, like, can I go to the bathroom? Like, no. Well, you just let Billy, Tommy, and Johnny go. I'm like, well,
he's my quarterback.
Yeah. So, like, in sobriety, there's a term called emotional sobriety, right? Like, hey, I'm sober from the drugs and alcohol, but I still, hey, I don't, like, I steal money from work, and I go to strip clubs, and I just live a dirty life, and like, that's only going to last so long if I'm an alcoholic or an addict, right? So it's about being emotionally sober. Hey, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to treat people with tolerance and love and be kind, and like, I'm going to try to treat everybody, not just the people I like that. Like, you know, like, I still remember one of the early stories. It was my first trip home in sobriety. I was 3 months sober. And
well, before we go into that,
hold on, good story right about this. We'll come back to it, right? And I have a flight from Daytona Beach, Florida to Atlanta with a layover, and then Atlanta to New Jersey, and I had a 24-hour layover in Atlanta. And I remember
Daytona to Atlanta to New Jersey. Okay.
Or excuse me, a 24-hour layover in Atlanta airport.
Wait, 24 hours, a full day?
Full day in Atlanta
Why
airport.
Did you book that flight?
There was delays and cancellations and yada, yada, yada. So I remember, and I'm like newly sober. I'm 3 months sober. And I remember going to the poor lady's getting killed at the desk.
Right?
She's getting hammered. And I went up there and I'm like, hello, how are you? Good, thank you. Oh, we'll put you on this next flight. I'm like, oh, thanks so much. I understand. And there was a package on the floor. I pick it up. Oh, here, miss, here's your package. And I was just nice to the lady for no reason. I was just trying to be nice, right? And she's like, you know what? Everyone's been really mean to me, and you've been super nice. I'm going to upgrade you to first class.
Wow.
Like, oh my God, that's great. So I get upgraded. That flight gets canceled, right? Right. But listen, because I was in first class, there was like 3 seats available on this next flight to White Plains, New York at like 6 a.m.
That's a great airport, Shadley.
Yeah, it is. And because I was was first class, I was able to upgrade and get on this flight and get home. If
They
not,
only gave the first class.
Yep. If not, I would have had to take a Greyhound back to Daytona. So like, I learned early in sobriety. It's like I got positive reinforcement.
Yeah,
like, hey,
yeah.
if you're a nice person to
Doing
people,
the right thing.
like you know, I'm not saying like the doors, but like you know, you're nice. Good shit happens.
I completely agree, and we're gonna go back to like I don't want to harp on your journey getting there, but I'm curious. Again, I have my own experience at APN getting sober.
Sure.
But like, and I want other people to hear your experience. Like, what was it like? Like, obviously, I want to know like what was like the turning point where you're like,
Sure.
hey, like
I know it
like
exactly.
bottom, like I need to change, and I'm like kind of curious on like like that occurrence, but also like who played a part in that with you?
Well,
family, friends.
So hold on, I'll tell you, right? So the thing is I knew for a long time it was about a year of living life of like, hey, I'm living an awful life. I need to change. And like, if it's like when the bottom hit that night, if like the treatment police and the AA police were there and said, hey pal, we'll help you, I would have been like, awesome, I'll take that help. But the problem would be is I'd eat a little food and I'd sleep in my parents' house like a hotel, right? And mom and dad were doing the laundry and there's food in the fridge, right? Which shout out parents, like, hey, set a boundary, kick your kid out of the house. I know it sucks, but it'll save his life, right? But so for like a year, they didn't kick me out of the house, and I was just living there, dying inside, basically, because I knew I was stealing from anybody I could at that point in time. I had been suspended from work. Things weren't, and I was just, my excuse to the people that I loved was gambling. My problem is gambling. It's not drugs. Heroin's a dirty word and I'll never say it. Right. So anyway, it was about a year of like, hey shit, I need help. Right. And then, but I didn't get to that. I'm like, you know what? It's over. I had made the decision. Today's the day. I'm going to get high one more time and I'm going to kill myself. Right.
And this was at your parents' house.
Well, so now I leave parents' house. I shut off my phone. I got about $60 on me. I'm going to pawn the phone. I'm going to get a little bit more money, and I'm going to buy a bunch of heroin in my car, and I'm going to kill myself.
Right.
Had a knife, all the stuff, right? It was dark and whatever. Thank God I couldn't do it. I ended up living in my car for about 10 days, and trying to detox in your car in New Jersey. In
what
the
do you
winter.
mean detox in your car?
Well, I said, hey, I'm going to get sober now.
Oh,
right?
so you went through the bags, and now you're like in the car, and you're like, all right, I'm changing my life. I'm getting sober.
Yep.
So you're sitting there in the car trying to get
16
sober.
hours of sweating and leg kicking and freezing, and I don't have a lot of money, so I don't have the car on because I don't want to waste all the gas.
Right.
And then I would stop and I would hustle and get 12 more bucks, 20 more bucks, get a couple bags. So it was like 10 days of like, hey, getting a little high, stopping for 2 days, 10 hours, and the back and forth. And it's funny because my story will always stay the same, but the longer you stay sober, what I've realized is if you look back, you see these God aha moments.
Right.
You see how God has his fingerprints on your life. You don't see it when you're 6 months sober, but we live life forwards, we understand it backwards, especially spiritually.
Say that
right?
again?
We live life forwards, we understand it backwards,
Great
especially spiritually, right? We can see how we were through the raindrops. Something was carrying me, right? So anyway, I'm sleeping in my car, and if you know New Jersey, which you do, I'm sleeping on Route 22. I'm sleeping up in Weehawken and Union City, all these weird spots. I was up on Route 46 one night, and then I went to Vauxhall Road. So Vauxhall Road's on Route 22 in Union County, which is the other side of where I live. And I'm in some apartment complex, and I'm in the back. It's a January night. I still remember, miserable. My nose is running. And the thing that happened is like all of a sudden my brain was super loud. I think alcoholics and addicts, we relate to how loud and fast your brain is. The literature calls it restlessness, right? But when I get high, my brain shuts off, right? And it's like, oh, that's great.
Thank God,
like,
right?
Oh my God.
I'm
right?
good.
And that lasts when you're getting high, like a minute, right? But like, and anyway, I'm sitting in this car. It's 1 a.m. I got like 2 half a cigarettes, like life is bad. And all of a sudden, it starts snowing, and it was that kind of like thick, big snowflakes,
Right, yeah.
where it was almost slow. It wasn't snowing hard, but it was whatever, and it had this still feeling to it. And I remember stepping outside the car, shivering, smoking that cigarette, and I finally got a glimpse of what my life looked like. But I didn't get it from my point of view, right? Because my point of view is selfish and self-centered.
Right.
I got it from my mom's point of view. What does your life look like right now? And it was like, your life looks, I can picture my mom crying. I'm the
Italian mother.
I'm the prince.
Like seeing her prince like dying on the side of the road.
Nobody knows where I am. We talked about good people, right? I had high school teammates, college teammates, people I worked for looking for me. At the same time, there was another teacher that had gone missing, so the cops thought it was connected. How
Oh, wow.
crazy is that story? My buddies now in sobriety like, yeah, you were on the milk carton. And I was, because I was missing. Nobody knew where I was. I had a kid I played with in college as a Port Authority cop. He's like, your name, I saw your piece of paper came across my desk with your picture. You were missing for 10 days or 12 days. And it's
crazy.
And I'm just living in my car, like whatever. And anyway, so in this moment, I get a glimpse of what my life looks like from my mom's point of view. And I'm like, holy shit. And it was still. And they say spirituality or God enters in through the wound. Right. And in that moment in time, he entered. And like, again, I went to it was 2 a.m. I drove home. It was 5:30 a.m. I go down my parents' driveway. My dad happens to walk outside as I'm walking down the driveway.
God shots.
Hugs me. We go right to detox. Right. And of course, I get out of detox a week later. I'm like, listen, I'm okay.
It's just gambling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's just. Because you start to feel better, the ego reinflates, right? But thank God, right? Again, God is good, and he had his fingerprints on it all. And our one buddy had been sober for about 2 years, and he got on the phone with my dad, and he said, "Listen, you got to get him out of here."
So, like, when
you got to get him.
Did your family have any experience with anyone that's sober?
None.
So, like, when you got there, when you walked home, when you get home, you're in the driveway, your dad walks out, you hug him. Like, whose idea was it to go to detox? Like, how did that?
I was like,
out?
I need help. We got to go to detox.
So you had known about detox before?
Yes. I mean,
so
at
he's
that
like,
point,
when you go to detox, so he takes you there, you go.
We're like Googling it together, the three of us. Me, my mom, I was 29, and my 29-year-old and my parents Googling detoxes.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. And the first two places I went, my blood pressure was 120/80. They're like, you're fine. We can, your insurance won't take you.
Right. So
like,
it's crazy.
I was like, what? I didn't know that business at all. Like, what do you mean? Like, I feel like I'm going to die right now.
Like, I am addicted to drugs and
alcohol. Give me some Suboxone right now, right? So anyway,
you go to detox, right? And now you come back from detox. Now you're like back, like you're not ready to surrender yet.
Well, I'm not, but other people in my life did it. And I was done fighting, right? Like, so even though I wanted to, like, hey, they said just go to IOP and I'm just going to do that and I'll fix it.
Yeah.
My dad and my mom are like, no, there's this place in Edgewater, Florida, Central Florida called whatever it is. And you're going to go there. We already talked to them. It's Monday. I got out of Super Bowl Sunday. I got out of detox Super Bowl when Peyton Manning played the Seahawks. And the first play of the game was the snap over his head. Right.
Wait,
and it was a safety.
Peyton Manning played
was with the Broncos.
And in MetLife Stadium.
MetLife Stadium in New York. And this is how, like, delusional. I'm a gambling addict too, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to get into that. But I remember being in the detox telling everybody that the Broncos were a lock. Put your mortgage on the Broncos. The Broncos lost 42-9 or something, right? So, like, it just proves that I was a mush in gambling as well, right? And, like, I didn't know anything about anything, right? So, anyway, thank God my parents talked to some people who were going to go to this place. And I was at the point, I was like, listen, I had been suspended from work. I had certified mail, like, hey, we don't want you to come back because I was working at two different schools and both of them had suspended me. We don't want to see you. So I didn't really have a lot of options. So I was like, okay.
Fuck it, right?
Yeah, okay. And I had to wait a week to get that bed. And it was Sunday and I was flying to Daytona Beach, or I flew to Orlando the following Sunday. And I'm telling you, my parents, like, they didn't leave. Like, I would have got high that week. Right. I would have stole, but I remember also that week it snowed. I remember my mom, she's like, hey, you got to go shovel. And again, it's weird. In my sobriety, my mom acted like I thought my dad would, and my dad acted like I thought my mom would. My dad,
in what way?
My dad was sweet and compassionate and, like, I could lie to. My mom was like a foot up my ass. Right. And I remember,
you were the baby.
But in that moment I wasn't. I was shoveling and my mom's like, look at you. You're a disgrace. Your 65-year-old father shoveling and you're so sick. You haven't shoveled 2 feet. Look at him. Wow. He's 65 and you're looking at him. He's going to have a heart attack and you're here. Look, you're like on my ass.
It's interesting you say that, right? I think that what happens is... It didn't happen, like, with my story, but what I've heard from others, and, like, I think, and with any situation, like, parents don't know how to react.
No idea.
And, right, like, I don't think she was coming at you directly, and, like, I think she was upset at the situation, and she was just, like, reacting.
Absolutely.
Right?
No idea.
And it's like...
It's funny, too, like, when you have a child, my brother says this, like, he puts a crib together or a toy, there's, like, a 30-page instruction how to put that toy together. When he left the hospital with his kids, they say, hey, good luck. There's no instructions. Like, my parents did the best they could raising their alcoholic, insecure son.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything wrong. They did their best. And listen, God bless them. They kept me alive. They kept me, and I've been able to be a son and a brother the last 8 years. And let's get back to the story though, right?
So now you wait a week, right? You get on the flight to Daytona.
Yep.
Right. Clear, Edgewater, Florida.
Weird place.
Right. So you're 2 weeks sober.
Yeah, I went to like 5 days of detox and waited a week, like 12 days sober.
Yeah, so you're 12 days sober. And like, I guess before we get into that, like, we had talked about this separately, but did you think about what your life was going to be like sober? Did you think about like, were you nervous? Did you want to surrender? Did you like, what was going through? Are you going to get your pants off your back?
No. Yeah. So yes and no. The idea is like, hey, like I need to change something, but like, hey, I'll do this for 6 months and I'll go back and I'll get high, but I'll do it in a controlled way. But right. I again, first rehab, first detox. I had no knowledge of like anything. I was a greenhorn basically, right? So I went and I was like, hey, just to get him off my ass a little bit. I wanted to change my life. I knew I needed to, but I also wasn't ready to let go. Like, because that's so much fear. Like,
100%.
Like, I'm going to stop smoking weed. I'm going to stop doing, and I'm going to just be sober. Like I have no idea what that looks like, right? But something happened. I was supposed to do 30 days, and again, about day 15 or 17, while I was there, the surrender happened of like, hey, I'll extend to 60.
Oh, wow.
You know,
was there like something that happened?
No, it was a 10-bed facility. We had 6 guys there. I got along with everybody.
Right.
And it was just like everybody was doing 60 or 90. And I was like, I have nothing to go back to. It's the winter. It's snowing. Like, what am I doing? Like, and then all of a sudden in those 60 days, and then again, I do 60 days. It's great. I feel great, but everyone's like, you should stay and go to halfway sober house. No, I'm going home. I got
it's
a
crazy
teacher.
how like times have changed and went from like halfway houses to like sober living.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
the prices too. Oh my God. But anyway, like I remember saying to people like, well, what are you going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm really leaving it up to God. It's like, I wanted God to write in the clouds in Central Florida, New Jersey, or stay.
Like push you in the right direction.
Yeah, like
you just fall.
Like you knew it. So anyway, I decide to go home and they're all over me about it. So listen, I go home with no plan and I say, Mom and Dad, like, hey, let's find a halfway. I went and visited a place in Dover, New Jersey, and Newark. And then I'm like, listen, I seen the halfway in Florida. We're 6 houses from the ocean. I'm going to go live in Dover, New Jersey with 20 people.
So why did you go back home to start with? Why didn't you just go right there?
I don't know. I was scared.
Oh, okay.
Fear.
Oh, okay.
Right. So anyway, I call them back. I say, hey, do you still have a bed available? And I stayed sober that week and I went back to Florida and I was going to do, 2 months of halfway. And I've been in Florida 8 years now. So
how long did you stay in halfway? So
I became the halfway house manager.
Crazy.
Which I don't know if this is, I won't say that, but I was like the tallest. I was like, being the halfway house manager is like a funny thing. It's like, I'm the manager. It's like, you're a manager at a halfway house,
no,
bro.
But like listen,
it's like easy, pal.
So I think it's interesting, right? Because like I see exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's like you're also in charge of kids' lives, right? Like,
not really. I was collecting rent and like giving random UAs and like.
Right, but imagine a dude like pisses and it's dirty piss, right? And
I understand.
You let him off.
So I had responsibility.
Right? So and that kid ODs, right? Like.
And so I had responsibility, and we were super involved they wanted us super involved in AA. So I was like the leader too. Like, hey, I would go to like 9 meetings a week the first 6 months. Like I wasn't halfway, like 8 months, 9 months.
When did you, what, like how long, like, when did you become the manager? Like how many?
3 months in.
So you were like.
I was like 5 months sober.
And you were in charge of all these kids.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Men. Yeah.
That's scary.
And there were a lot of Central Floridians, and I'm a New Jersey, and I had never been called a Yankee before until then.
Right.
Yeah.
But they probably showed you some respect.
No, they did. I got
this Italian guy from New Jersey. They probably got a little scared that you had like some cousins coming down.
So I did a lot of work, did some clinical work, some EMDR, but also the facility.
Wait, what?
Do you know what EMDR is?
Oh, I thought you said that as a client, as a patient, or
I didn't give anybody EMDR. I'm not certified in EMDR.
I thought you said you were.
Can't even spell my last name. You want me? I'm not giving anybody. So I did some EMDR while I was there, but it was a 12-step facility, and so basically I got really involved in the 12-step fellowship, and did the process.
Right.
We're not going to talk again. The 12-step process seems so hocus pocus. It seems so, like how is that crap going to work for me, right? But if you get out of the way and you do it, like something happens, something changes, and I have that experience in my own life, and I've seen it in other people's lives. And again, at the end of the day, all the 12 steps is living by principles.
Yeah.
How do I live by principles?
No, it's interesting, right? And hearing this, what comes to mind for me, and it's not really necessarily part of my story, but like for anyone in recovery, right? You hear about like spiritual awakenings.
Sure.
Right? And it's like, it doesn't have to be a specific object or variable, right? Like things just come to you and like your eyes like open. Clear again.
Aha moments.
Yeah. And it seems that like the first one, right? Where you were at treatment, right? And it was like 15 days in, and like a normal addict or alcoholic is like 15 more days and then I'm out.
I'm out.
Right. And your first thought was like something clicked there.
And that wasn't me. Something did that.
Yeah, something clicked. And it was like an out of body experience. And you were like, all right, let's stay longer. Right. And then like something clicked about going back to Florida. Right. And then God put you in another position. Right. And I hate to bring God into this, but like, something put you in another
spirituality,
position,
Mother
right?
Earth.
Where like, hey, Andy, like, we're going to put you in charge of like the manager of the sober living. Right. Because if you weren't, you could have left there and went and used. But it kept you in that sober living and it kept you sober.
Absolutely.
Right. And now you're working, going to be the leader in the AA groups. Right. It kept you sober. Right. And it's like these things just don't happen. Right. Because when you're controlling your life, right, you're not doing those things. But when someone else or something else is controlling your life,
surrender of it. Like the recovery world's like Paradoxville, right? You gotta give it away to keep it. You gotta surrender to win. You know, it's a crazy. It's like it goes against everything. You know, like, hey, you don't give in. A man doesn't give in. All the bull crap. You know, hey, we were tough and give up, man. Get it. It's not in your. You know, like let it go. Like me in charge. I was in rehab as a 30-year-old. That was me in charge of my life. I crashed it.
Yeah.
You know, I crashed the friggin' the car. The other thing about you know, being down there and in that situation is just being involved in the fellowship of it. Right. You know, and I didn't get like, oh, I'm in halfway, but being around like 6 to, you know, at times there's 4 or 5 guys in the house. Sometimes there's 7. And there's something so humbling about like, I'm living in halfway. But again, we had so much fun. Like we had fun getting in the 1997 Explorer and going to a meeting that didn't have air conditioning in Central Florida.
It's funny. I want to comment that, but I also want to go back to something in your treatment. But it's funny when people talk, and this happened to me, right? When people talk about sober living, right, or halfway houses, it sounds like you're going back to the dorms. It's gonna be a shitty life.
That's
like,
what my dad thought,
and it's shitty, right?
My dad,
but like in reality, it's a frat house or a sorority house, right? Men or women. Right, and that
shouldn't be both. If anyone's listening, don't go to a co-ed one
where there's no drugs or alcohol.
Don't go to a co-ed one.
So it's like who doesn't have fun in like a fraternity house or a sorority house, right? Where and like there's no drugs or alcohol, but you're all hanging out. You're there for the same reason. Like there's bound to be someone that like you fuck with or like sports or this or that. So it's like I don't know. Like there's a notion that it's shitty. Yeah. Right. And like I want to like set the record straight. Like yes, there might be shitty ones out there, but like the idea
saved my life.
Yeah, and mine too. Right. And the idea is like to create that level of community because it's so important in recovery. But I want to go back to your treatment. Looking back at those 60 days, is there someone that was there that was like. I'm so thankful. Like when I look back at my treatment, like I see somebody.
Well, so here I got a story. So I got it was like a crew of people, but and I was actually at a wedding in February. And the cool thing it was a kid that came 3 months after me to the place I went, and I actually sponsored him. It was the first guy I sponsored, but I stopped sponsoring him because we started living together. Anyway, he's getting married, and the person that we had one therapist at this treatment center, and she did everything. Sweet lady named Holland. And I had stayed in touch once a year. He's sweet, just whatever. Like Holland, I know. And listen, you know, she wasn't an alcoholic and addict, but she loved the yoga and spirituality and knew this, church. Anyway, she married my buddy and his wife. She was like the officiant. And I hadn't seen her.
I thought you said your buddy married her. I was like, wait,
no. So I haven't seen her since I left the treatment center. I ended up working there, so I haven't seen her since 2015. And I don't know if he told me, but when I saw her, I almost started crying. Like this woman, like was so important to I remember my dad calling her. He's like, "Who's this whack job?" Because my dad's an Italian from Brooklyn, and she's talking about Al-Anon and therapy and and yoga. And my dad's like, my mom was open to it. My dad's like, I ain't changing my life because my son's an idiot. But again, now when I talk about Holland, my dad's like, "Oh, what a great woman," And I got to see her in February, and like we talked about it. We took a picture and like all this great shit.
Posted on Facebook.
No, I don't. Yeah, humble brag. No, I'm so humble. I don't put shit up. I'm falsely humble. Right. But yeah. So again, the story's a little crazy, and just to keep it rolling, right? So then I got an opportunity again, being the only family I had in in Florida was a gentleman that lived in Fort Lauderdale, and he was my brother's brother-in-law. And this gentleman ended up, I would go down and visit him, and he ended up getting married and having family. So that was the family dinner. I would go down once a month. I'd drive. It'd be 3 hours down to Fort Lauderdale.
Because you were living in Daytona?
I was living in Central Florida, Daytona.
Central Florida.
So it took about 3.5 hours, 3 hours to get down there. So I would go like once a month. And we started talking about treatment centers, and I'm a year and a half sober now, 2 years sober.
And where are you working right now?
I'm working at the place I went to, kind of like.
So yeah, so let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
I think that's like really full circle there.
Yeah.
So you work at Sober Live, you work at the halfway house, you're the manager.
And I'm working at the facility.
And then how do you get connected to the facility?
Well, so our halfway, everybody living at the halfway went to the facility. It was like, it wasn't open to the community. You had to go through our facility to get there. And, we just knew everybody. It was a small place, 10 beds. There was like 15 people that worked there, and we knew them from recovery. So I started working overnights, and then I started working at the IOP, and I started working there. And
you know, what's funny, hearing your entire
making
story.
$12 an hour in Central Florida, for the record.
For the record, let that be stated, right? $12 an hour.
But in Central Florida, I was like a millionaire.
Yeah,
anyway.
Right. But what's funny is that's the second time that happened in your life. Right, going back to high school, right? You go to high school, you build these relationships. You're a great dude,
Good
right?
Point.
You're sober,
Holy
right?
shit.
People respect you. They want to work with you.
Don't put me on the couch. Don't put me on the couch. I don't know what that meant.
Right? And now it's like there's something about you, right, that people that are attracted to, right? And it's like, without those drugs and alcohol, people want to be around you, or it seems that, right? And so it happens to you in high school, right? You go to high school, you go to college, they hire you at 22 right off the bat to coach, be responsible for their kids, right? Now you go to treatment, you're 60 days, clearly you made an impact there, and they're hiring you to be a manager of this, and then they're hiring you right back. And I just think that like it shows what type of person you are, and like I think we've spoken about it a few times where it's like, yes, you are a drug addict and you are an alcoholic, but that doesn't show who you are as a person, right? It's, it's a defect, whatever it is, but like that's not who you truly are. And it's like these people, it wasn't just one person, right? It was multiple people that saw this, right? And earlier in your life, and now it's later, and I just find it interesting, man.
Well,
and I see it,
and I appreciate that. And but the thing that's super cool is that like my worst day was that parking lot before I went to my parents' house. Right. It was the worst day of my life. Today I look and that's the greatest day of my life.
Crazy.
Right. And I thank God for that day. Right. Because without that day, I'm not here. And like, you know, more of my stories about gambling. I ended up losing like 10 grand on tennis and women's tennis. It's a wild story. We're not going to get into that. Right. But like, again,
10x expert here.
No, like I was losing
and Super Bowl.
I was betting preseason football and baseball and losing, and I owed like $1,500. So I started chasing it and I started winning money on tennis. Anyway, I lost 10 grand in like 10 minutes in tennis. It was ridiculous. But anyway, that was the worst. But that was amazing. But that was great because what that did is that took me from pills and like keeping my life together. That took me to Newark, New Jersey, and to find heroin. Right. And which is the worst. But again, thank God, because I wouldn't be here. Right. So again, let's fast forward then back to Central Florida. So this buddy I'm talking to.
So now you're going to dinner. Is 30
going
hours
down
away.
there. He starts talking about treatment. He says, "Let's open. You want to open a treatment center?"
And how? So
I'm like 2 years sober.
And I'm so, like, again, another person is looking to you to trust you, right? And I think like it just shows what type of person you are, right? Like you have this personality, right? And like the trust factor that someone's coming to you, whether it be with their kids, whether it be with clients, right? Like they're coming to you.
I should pay you to follow me around, like be the cheerleader. This is
right,
great.
But it's like crazy, right? And it's like you do have an attractive personality, but you have a trustworthy personality, right? Like you're not going out there and like trying to win, like yes, in your addiction, I'm sure like you did it like everyone else did, right? But like I think that like when you're authentic, right, you're looking out what's best for yourself, but also everyone surrounding you, and you want what's best for everyone else.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You know, and seeing people succeed is like, it's unbelievable. You know, like it's like, you know, it's
we'll get there. So let's go.
So anyway, so this gentleman says, you know, we talk about, he's like, who do you know? And, you know, and I knew a couple guys in South Florida and they knew a couple other people in South Florida. Again, I didn't know anybody in South Florida, but again, living in South Florida is closer to a North Jersey than Central Florida, right? Yep. So I was attracted just to like the New York license plate and the New Jersey, you know, and like, hey, how you doing?
Snowbirds.
Yeah, a little how you doing, right? All this stuff, right? So anyway,
especially the grandmas and grandpas.
Long story short is we end up introducing my buddy to a bunch of people down in South Florida. One person knows this person, and all of a sudden we're opening a treatment center. And then boom, and we go from, it took about 5 months, and we're like operational. So now I'm moving from Central Florida to South Florida. I know two people and my buddy, who's the owner of the facility. And we opened this 10-bed all-male substance abuse and trauma facility. It grows to 18 beds, and we stay open from like 2015-ish to 2019.
So let me ask you a question.
And we did a lot of good work. We helped a lot of people.
Well, I want to get to that point, but when you So you and your buddy are starting this treatment center.
Yeah.
Right? Does he have any experience in recovery?
No, his only experience was seeing, 'cause again, he's my brother's brother-in-law.
Okay, yeah.
So and I knew him, my brother was married 10 or 12, so I've known him 10 or 12 years. So he's seen me before I was an awful person, like, hey, Andy's a good guy.
Yeah.
And then he saw me like missing family functions and like showing up and sleeping.
But he has no experience, work experience or personal experience.
Zero experience with recovery.
So now he's starting a business with you.
Yep.
As basically the head honcho, right? Like
he said he was either going to get in the weed business or in this. So it was like a flip of the coin.
Right.
Like I was like, that's an interesting fork in the road.
And I just bring this up again because it's just another example of how it's come to you. It's like, hey, like this guy's coming in, right, and putting his name as the owner,
sure,
but basically has no experience and saying, hey, Andy, here are the keys.
Putting a lot of money too,
right?
Yeah.
So he's putting money into you basically, right? Like signing you as a free agent and saying like, play. Right? Like, we'll see what you do.
Something like that. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
And so it's another relationship that like you have that you're trusted in, and people know that you're going to succeed, right? I don't think there was a doubt that this person didn't think you were going to succeed. And like, so I'm curious to see like, right, like what were you excited about that opportunity? Because now we're getting into like
the most, and weirdly, the most exciting thing it was about is that he was family, and I almost felt like it was my family, like saying, hey pal, you're off the hook. Like I felt I almost felt like, hey, like we're proud of you. To hear the family say we're proud of you, and everybody, like no one had said we're not, but like to the fact that I was being brought into that, like it felt good. It felt like I was
turning the page.
Yeah, absolutely, and that I was like a good person.
Yeah.
And again, the insecurity and the mental health side of addiction it's wild because it like, again, we stopped using drugs and alcohol, and the mental health stuff, it's just yapping at all times, right? And not at all times, right? At times you're doing the work, but again, like my brain, it's weird to say this, but my brain's not on my team. My brain, it tells me things that it just doesn't give me good ideas. Like, it's like, hey pal, what about trying this? I'm like, that seems wild. I don't want to do that. Like where before in my addiction, I'd be like, you know what, brain, great call. Let's do that. Let's bet on women's tennis. Like
preseason football.
Absolutely.
Denver's a lot.
Yeah. And I have to remember still my brain, again, like I don't generate my thought. If I generate great positive thoughts, I'm not like, oh, it's because I'm a great positive guy. Like my brain just generates these thoughts, and it doesn't define who I am. But what I do as a mental health and a substance abuse is I take these thoughts and I hold on to them and let them drag me around. And it's just cool. Let the thought pass and let's keep it moving.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, like, so you talked about being a gym teacher and a coach, right? Where you wanted to do your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have these unique opportunities where you can.
Oh, I felt purpose in this job, big time.
Right, and so it's like, did you ever think like, when did the career set in, right? Where it's like you've like give it like, and I don't want to say given up on your like your original dream, but like when did that career dream path type of thing change where you're like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, whether it's here or whether it's somewhere? Like, when did that like hit you and be like, this is what I want to do, this is what I love? Well,
not a sexy answer, right? But what kept me in Florida and what kept me in this profession was my recovery. I felt like God put me in Florida for my recovery and the people I get to help in my personal life and people I get to meet in my personal life. And then, oh shit, on top, here's the cherry on top, you get to help people at work too. But that's a job, right? But again, you get to see, like, again, plumbers and electricians help people, right? But if my toilet doesn't work, the person's not gonna die, right? In our field, if we get to see people recover, we get to see so again, the more I felt like I was supposed to be there for my recovery, my career started, and all of a sudden I was like, do I have a career in substance abuse field? Like, where did this happen? Because I was just trying to go to meetings and help guys, and like all of a sudden, hey, now I've been in this field 8 years. So again, when I focus on my personal life and what's happening and how I can be helpful there, then this side just gets better and better. Yeah, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and there's a perfect. What hits me square in the face is the parallel of like, as a coach, right? It's you're teaching kids and you're helping these kids grow into men or women.
Sure.
Right? You're helping them become better athletes, better people on the field or off the field, right? Teaching them life lessons, right? And you're kind of doing the same thing, but in recovery.
Absolutely.
So it's right. Like, and absolutely. I think that it talks about like your type of
my skill set too.
Right?
Yeah.
And your skill set, like what you're passionate about, right? Yes, it could be recovery. It could be coaching this kid to throw a spiral, hit a jump shot, like hit a softball, whatever it is. But the passion is helping others.
Yeah.
Right. And being there to support them and seeing it through. And you talk talked about it kind of when opening up about being like an alumni, right?
Yeah.
The alumni director here. And it's like, you're seeing them come into treatment at APN, right? And you're seeing them, the path there and helping them
Absolutely.
going back to the community, right? And it's just like, it just keeps reoccurring, right? And like, they shouldn't be surprises anymore.
The biggest difference between the coaching, seeing people get better, and now is that, and I had to learn what this word was, but I was very self-seeking, right? So I helped a kid when I was coaching if it made me look, hey, coach is working with that quarterback. That quarterback's going to go to Division I. He's a great coach. That's when I wanted to help, right? But if the JV quarterback that couldn't chew gum and walk straight, hey, pal, go do these drills. Right, I was self-seeking because I wasn't emotionally sober. Now I help people and I shut the heck up about it.
Yeah,
right, because now some things have changed in how I live.
I don't know
if that makes sense.
It does, but I agree and disagree because
Okay.
I think you're discrediting like who you are as a person.
I get it
because I think you showing up and giving your time to be a coach, right? Like,
Yeah.
me as an athlete, right? Like, I look back on like all the time and effort I had, practices,
Sure.
right? Games, all this stuff, training. Like, these coaches had to show up and be there. You were doing that,
True.
right? And to guess, like, selfishly, you like
I was
the
high
sport.
sometimes.
Yeah, but
in
you were
the
still
beginning,
there.
I was good
and
at it.
there's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
a piece
yeah.
of you that's there, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of your high, you're still
Present. I'm still
like,
there.
not like mentally, but physically.
physically present.
No, it's unique, right? And I guess like to tie it into APN, right? I'm kind of curious. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to talk about like any.
No,
of,
I
like,
will.
No, but I meant like between the two businesses. But like, I'm kind of curious to see like, where you are today, right?
Well, so how the heck did we get here, right? So I'm working at this place in Florida, and then out of nowhere, that guy that's the owner said, hey, I ran into this buddy in Maryland somewhere, and it was Noah, right? He's like, and I think
He's the CEO of APN.
he's like, I think we're gonna merge. I was like, what? When? He's like, in like 2-3 months. I'm like, Jesus,
Right.
thanks for, give me, And so then I had, they gave people in our company in Florida the opportunity if they wanted to come out and hey, be here, yada, yada, yada. But, and I really looked at it. I said, well, like, because I'd been working on the operations side of treatment for a while. And I was kind of like, it was like 5 years of that. I was kind of like burnt. And I said, well, I want to get into something else and yada, yada. So they said, all right, well, the deal is come out here for like 3 to 6 months. Hey, I'm single. I don't have kids. So I had the opportunity. I'm like, I'm an idiot if I don't take an opportunity to go to, and it was packaged. Hey, you're going to Vail, Colorado. And I've never skied, right? So I don't know what Vail, I just know it's like a bougie town, right? So I'm like, cool, let's make it.
What state is it in?
Yeah. Like, let's make this happen. Right. So I go out, I'm supposed to do 3 to 6 months. I end up doing 9. I see APN go from under construction when the lodge is under construction. So anyway, like I just had the chance to do it. And I came out and like I said, and then when I left, I was going to do like business development, but there was no alumni role yet. And so this was like something I was like, well, hey, I think I could be good at this. And one thing led to another, and and now we're here, and like I get to do the alumni, and I get to work with you, and Rocky's starting to work with us, and we get to do this podcast, and we get to help in such a unique way, uniquely useful. Third time,
uniquely useful.
It's unbelievable, but it's
and
pretty
he only
cool.
got a 1040 as SATs.
1050.
1050.
Hey, listen, back then it was only at a 16. Now these kids is at a 24 or something.
Right. Uniquely.
Yeah.
Right. Uniquely useful.
But so, yeah, I mean, that's like kind of my recovery full circle. Now I live in South Florida. I get the chance to come out here about once a month and connect with our clients on campus. And we do a ton of alumni events, whether it's in person or whether it's on Zoom. We're doing this podcast. We're just trying to grow this thing. And again, the cool part is we get to see people on a personal level and like see them grow and like their lives come back together. And again, I've seen that in my personal life, which is even cooler, or it's just as cool. No one's winning or losing. And I get to see it here. It's like I'm surrounded by people changing their lives. It's like awesome. Like, what did I do? Like, it's great. What do you got?
Yeah. It's just like I go back to this every time you talk about a different part of your story. It's so consistent, right? Like it's about you doing whatever you can internally to help others. Right. And that talks about in sports. It talks about in jobs and recovery. It talks about your job and alumni.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just interesting how it's all interconnected. And I think, and I want to go back to this, right, because like a lot of people, and especially like I don't want to talk to the listeners here, right, because people that are in treatment still are are deciding if they want to get sober or not.
Sure.
Right. And I know in my experience and others that people I've spoken to, it's like the stigma.
Yeah.
Right. Of like, I don't want to be labeled an alcoholic, right? I don't want to be labeled as a drug addict. But look at this dude. I'm sitting next to you right now. Look, you've helped shape millions, hundreds of like kids,
scores of men,
but kids' lives, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
as a teacher, right? As the as the manager of the sober living, as the IOP there, as the operations person at this, now at the alumni, like hundreds of people,
Listen,
right? And you're labeled as an alcoholic. Right. So like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Badge on.
Right. So it's like people like take away that stigma, right? And talk about like, yes, like he's just a good fucking dude that happens to like drugs and alcohol and that can't drink and use drugs anymore.
And listen, and you mentioned it when you were telling your stories, and we don't, this would be a whole nother hour, so we're not going to get into it, but the step 9 process, the restitution and amends process of my story, and going back to, people I worked with as teachers and coaches and some students. And listen, I had to get permission from, because I again, how do you make an amends to an 18-year-old kid that might be 19? You go to the mom and dad first. If they give you approval, then you reach out to the kid. And if the kid's willing to sit with you, awesome, you're willing to sit with them. And to say, hey, I did X, Y, or Z. Talk about fear. And not every kid wanted to sit with me. That was also like an eye-opening, like, hey, pal, go F yourself. You know, like some of them did. Some of them didn't ever get back to me. And that's fine.
Listen, I think that like...
But that was like, holy shit.
It's crazy, right? And I think in today's environment, that's like, it's more out in the open about mental illness and substance abuse, which I'm very grateful for, because I think it's hoping
much more common.
It's hoping lifting the stigma away.
Yeah.
But some people don't understand, right? And they're so short, like they're not thinking so clearly that like Andy fucked me over like, 8 years ago, like I can't talk to him or whatever it is, right? And now it's like, you know what? Like Andy was struggling. He has a disease. Like people have allergies. Right.
I was allergic to drugs.
Yeah. And it's like, what's the difference? Right. And unfortunately, people go through like have cancer. Right. And like these diseases. Right. So it's like, yes, like I'm not comparing like drug addiction or alcohol addiction to cancer, but they're just diseases out there, and some people have it and some people don't. And people shouldn't be stigmatized because of that. I get it. And it's just like your story represents how good of a person you are, regardless of being a drug addict or alcoholic.
Love it.
So no, listen, I think
this was great.
It was great, dude. Like, I know how vulnerable you have to be to share it, so I really appreciate that.
And listen, like there's so much, like not so much more, but just more details of just wildness. But we're not going to get into that.
No.
But like the point of the story is the point of the story. And like I said earlier, I think we talked about this, 2 things. If we told the story, my mom's in the room, we're not chuckling as much, right? The story's the same, but the mood is different.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is you learn more about the story the longer you get away from it and you look at it and you get on that helicopter and you look down like, oh, that's why that happened.
Yeah, I got a final question for you.
Shoot.
If your mom was sitting right here, what would be like one thing that stood out to her from like when you were like, what's changed with her? Like, how would she like, what excites her the most about like where you become as a person?
Yeah. So again, I'm the favorite, right? So like she's been the biggest. Like my mom.
Would she be sitting here crying right now?
Yeah. And if Lana was describing my mother, she would describe my mother as an enabler, right? But if I was on a plane and it was crashing and my mom could get out, she'd be like, "Fuck that! Put a seatbelt on and say I'm going down with my baby." Right. And now that I answer the phone and I'm honest with her and I send her flowers on Mother's Day or I send her flowers randomly and and I see her and I make time for her and I talk to her about how weird my dad gets and how my brother's an asshole. And like I'm a sounding board. And listen, it's so cool that sometimes people, my mom's so proud of me, of her son. There's people she works with, she's a real estate agent, and they'll be like, "Hey Pat, my son or my nephew or my niece is struggling. Can they call Andy?" She's like, "Of course." Right. So like she's even number 4, uniquely useful because she's so proud of me. She talks about me that when people are struggling, they call her to get my number. How
just
cool is that?
Just another person that trusts you though, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't be a surprise.
I don't know, I guess, man.
No, it's crazy. No, but I appreciate you being so honest and upfront.
Absolutely.
And I guess, this will kind of conclude this episode. I guess if you want to hear more, if you want more information about our podcast, go to apn.com/podcast. That's apn.com/PODCASTS.
Don't forget that backslash.
Yes, right. And then if you want to communicate with us, we're happy to provide any level of support. If you have questions, whatever it may be, feel free to email us at pod@apnlodge.com. That's pod@apnlodge.com. apnlodge.com.
There you go.
Thank you again to the producers, Keith.
Yeah.
Andy, appreciate your time here and looking forward to the episodes we have coming.
I'm pumped. Let's get it moving.
All right, cool.
All right, thanks, guys.